In the opening chapter of Franz Kafka's novel, The Castle, there is a land surveyor who arrives in a small village, and with his well-trained eye, he looks at the large castle where this mysterious count lives, the count who has invited him to the village. And he looks at this castle and he compares it in his mind with the church tower from his hometown. And then he makes this observation: the church tower tapering decisively, without hesitation, straightway to the top, capped by a wide roof with red tiles, was an earthly building. What else can we build? But with a higher goal than the low jumble of houses, and with a clearer expression than that of the dull workday. Kafka's surveyor asks a fine question and makes a helpful observation. What else can we build in this world than an earthly structure? And yet somehow this earthly structure of the church tower is different from all the rest, because it points to something else. It points to something that is beyond it. And so the point is that we have to build something, and we all do build something, whether we're thinking of it or not. We can build a life where people are drawn to worship God and to grow in their faith. Or we can construct a life like all the others, with a flat roof that points to nothing beyond us and is really just a monument to our own accomplishments. The church itself, and we Catholics who inhabit it, are in this world precisely to point beyond ourselves, to point to something else. Today's Feast of the Transfiguration is an event that expresses the same sentiment. Peter, James, and John are led up a high mountain, this natural structure that itself points beyond itself. And there on the top of that mountain, they catch a glimpse of glory that would give the rest of their lives a new sense of direction and a new sense of purpose. The revelation of Jesus conversing with Moses and Elijah gave them a new perspective on their daily work. That event, in some way, becomes a landmark of glory. It's a moment that they can refer back to throughout the rest of their lives, throughout their daily work, when they would get weighed down by the weight of this world. They could remember that moment of glory. And even when Jesus is mocked and spit upon and handed over and persecuted and suffers and dies, even throughout all of those things, they could have remembered that moment of glory as a landmark, as something that would give all of it meaning and purpose. Of course, they're weighed down in the midst of those difficulties and forget the glory that Jesus had revealed to them. But it was there. That moment of glory was there. The Transfiguration is a reminder that life is aimed at that kind of glory, not the kind of glory that we can create as human beings. It's not about how high we can raise someone on our shoulders or how magnificently we can praise them. It doesn't matter if we're being persecuted or made fun of. It doesn't matter if the world says that we are nothing. It doesn't matter if we can't even recognize our own goodness and our own beauty. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because we are made for a glory that is beyond this world. A glory that is beyond our reach, but is brought near through the person of Jesus. And so we're left with this surveyor's question. What can we build? What are we doing in this world? Peter wants to build tents, but Jesus isn't interested, because the glory that was just revealed is not a glory that is confined to a particular place, to a lofty mountain where only a few people can get to it. The glory of Christ can be seen anywhere that he chooses to reveal it. In fact, it was St. Irenaeus who said that the glory of God is man fully alive. So it's not locked away in some secret compartment where only a few visitors can come and see it. It's visible in the way that we live. It's how we face challenges, how we celebrate joys, how we deal with loss, how we share life with our friends. How we do all of those things determines whether or not the glory of God will be visible in us. So we are not castles, but church towers that point beyond ourselves. Our lives are not meant to be sealed up behind steep stone walls or safely protected by a moat or a drawbridge. Our lives are meant to be visible in the midst of the jumble of humanity, to be a clear landmark, a visible sign of how Christ's glory is present among us. And that means that we have to live differently. We aren't called to live for human glory, for material rewards, and for earthly acclaim. We're called to live for divine glory, a glory that can only be attained by our faithfulness to God. And you and I both know that it's not easy. It's not easy because there's something enticing about this human glory. It's nice to be liked, to be admired, to be considered famous and talented. But when all of these things depend on broken and sinful human beings, we know that it will never last. Because we human beings are always looking from one thing to another. We praise one thing in one moment, and then we push it to the side, and then we look for something else, and then we lift that up, and we stare at it for a while, then we push it to the side, and then we move on to something else, and we idolize it for a while, and then we push it to the side. That is how human glory works. We lift one thing up, and then push it to the side for the sake of something else. And all the while we are looking at one thing after another, while we're trying to have other people look at us and lift us up, all the while God has his eyes fixed on us and says, "Don't you see how beautiful you are? Don't you see how you are made for glory? Not this fleeting glory that passes, but glory that will last forever." And yet we spend so much time trying to get people to look at us, to look at our accomplishments. And God just wants us to know that the glory is already waiting for us if we will just be faithful to him. And that means that we have to forego some of the glory that humanity offers. And persecution and sacrifice and suffering and even death are steps along that path to the glory that God wants to give. So we may look like all the rest, and we may work with all the rest. We may dress like all the rest. But we are not called to live like all the rest. We're called to be church towers among the jumble of houses and buildings that surround us. We are, by the way that we live and by the way we witness our faith, landmarks of the Transfiguration, offering a glimpse of the glory that all humanity is made for.